Safe follows Carol White, a wealthy housewife whose life changes when she develops a mysterious environmental illness. On the surface, the film holds the conventions of a social drama, but many critics have classed Safe a horror film. But why? What is it about this film that is so unnerving? What director Todd Haynes does to create the distinct, uneasy atmosphere of the film is he takes the conventional characters and locations and portrays them in a completely unfamiliar way.
Hi, it's me.
Framing is one technique used to do this. Safe takes place within a wealthy, middle-class Californian suburb, a setting frequently portrayed in film and TV as this idyllic utopia of living. However, Haynes takes a completely different approach, contaminating this familiar environment with an aura of discomfort and uncanniness. While the sight of large, minimalist rooms often signifies wealth, Haynes chooses to present them through long, static wide shots, creating an unusual atmosphere. The length of these shots have a voyeuristic quality, forcing us to watch Carol linger as if she herself is just a piece of furniture. Very rarely do we get close-ups of Carol, this distancing of the protagonist creating a feeling of removal, of separation from the audience. Scenes between Carol and her husband lack intimacy, their interactions being examined from afar, often in two separate frames, signifying that their relationship is missing any form of passion or connection. Haynes has cited Stanley Kubrick as one of the main influences upon the look of Safe, particularly 2001: A Space Odyssey.
The sense of it being this completely, I just wanted to feel like all the air in Safe was recycled air, like you were in an airport and you were on one of those conveyor walkways and everything. There was just carpet that would go from floor to ceiling. There would just be a sense of space and the sense of the natural being completely and totally removed from human existence.
Another Kubrick influence is A Clockwork Orange. Take the opening, for example. A slow zoom out from the protagonist reveals what feels like a never-ending space. Haynes frequently uses zooms throughout Safe, but rarely are these zoom outs. Rather, Haynes slowly zooms in on Carol, her world closing in on her, suffocating her despite being surrounded by these vast, sterile spaces. This is partly why Safe is so unnerving. Carol cannot take sanctuary from the outside world as this invisible threat has now invaded her home. This place of warmth and comfort is no longer safe.
Oh my God.
While the main question of the film is, what is this illness affecting Carol? There is a sense that there is something else wrong. Something on a deeper level than her physical health. What makes Carol so fascinating is, as Roddy Reed puts it, she's at once a stereotype and something other that queers it and draws us in. So while she's a wealthy housewife who lives a sheltered, uncomfortable life in her luxurious gated home, she is also fragile, quiet and passive, the whining tone of her voice accompanied by hesitation and silences.
So much of it, too, is that we were raised and
She is completely detached from this world that she should fit into so well. Actress Julianne Moore explained that, to achieve Carol's tone, she spoke above her vocal cords and used a kind of breathy speech to create the sense that her voice was bodiless. Both her voice and the words she tries to say evoke a sense of discomfort and uncertainty, like she doesn't know how to live the life she's been given. Her first words
It's freezing in here.
are a complaint. She's unsatisfied in both her relationships and lifestyle. She neither fits in her home or her assigned role as mother and housewife.
Dad, how do you spell Uzi?
In fact, the way she speaks and how she's treated resembles that of a child rather than an adult. Listen to the way she talks to her maid.
Y este también, porque este así me gusta, a mí me gusta. Lo más limpio. Y con esto se hace así.
Sí? Where's my book? My telephone book?
We expect a wealthy housewife to be assertive and dominant. But instead, Carol calls out to Fulvia like a child asking their mother for attention. She even describes herself as a milkaholic, always being seen drinking milk, perhaps as a means to develop some form of strength and immunity. But Carol is not a child. She's an empty void of a woman. That is, until her health deteriorates. Once she becomes ill, Carol suddenly becomes active, almost obsessed with finding the source of the problem. In an interview, Haynes said, "In many ways, her illness is the very thing that shakes her free from her comatose state." While the male patriarchal figures around her, such as her husband and healthcare professionals, dismiss her problems as female hysteria, her illness is the one thing that grounds her, that tunes her into her surroundings and allows her to find her place in the world.
Who are you? You are of all
While
ages.
Carol's health is the main focal point of the film, the themes and messages that can be drawn from it are much more subtle. One interpretation of Safe is that it acts as a critique of class and consumer culture. Roddy Reed describes how the static framing and sterile mise-en-scène of the film create an ironic critique of the superficiality of 1980s hyper-consumerist, control-obsessed, middle-class culture. Despite her wealth and privilege, the emptiness of her repetitive lifestyle may be what leads Carol's health to drastically decline. As she doesn't have the ability to vocalise how she feels, or even the ability to identify what she feels, she suffers silently through her health. It isn't her environment that she's allergic to, but her lifestyle. Another interpretation of Safe, and one which is referenced to much more explicitly, is how it acts as a metaphor for AIDS and New Age thinking. While the film does briefly mention AIDS in relation to a couple of characters, the commentary on the subject is linked through Carol's environmental illness and the way others around her perceive it. In an interview, Haynes stated, "I feel that AIDS, as it's associated with homosexuality, has a historical connection to illnesses attributed to women." With this in mind, Haynes purposefully chose to set this metaphor for AIDS in a drastically different environment than what it's associated with.
Found it, somehow compelling to put it in this very unlikely place, a place that seemed entirely safe.
The AIDS pandemic of the 1980s was widely ignored by the US government of the time due to its association with homosexuality. With the underfunding of research and treatment, many HIV sufferers turned to New Age thinking as a means to cope with and treat their illness. This concept of New Age health is centered around positive thinking and self-love as a cure, as exemplified in Louise Hay's The AIDS Book, Creating a Positive Approach.
I believe that all illness is self-created. Not that we say I want to have this illness, but we do create a mental atmosphere where this disease can grow and flourish.
This is the same toxic positivity Carol encounters at Brentwood, the New Age health retreat she attends in the hopes of finding the cure to her illness. Although she is now in a community that validates her illness, it teaches her that the cause is from within, that she must blame herself in order to get better. Her teacher and guide Peter is a New Age believer and AIDS sufferer who preaches the benefits of internal positivity and criticism.
Now, nobody out there made you sick, you know that. The only person who can make you get sick is you, right? Whatever the sickness, if our immune system is damaged, it's because we have allowed it to be, through exactly the kind of anger that you're showing us now. Does that make sense?
While these messages give her hope and validation, we know something that she doesn't. She has lost both her immunity and her identity. The final scene of Safe is perhaps the most terrifying. Carol stood alone in her own isolated bunker, repeating the words, "I love you." On the surface, this may seem like a happy ending. She is safely away from the outside world, expressing affection to herself. But there's a level of irony in that her story ends exactly where it began. In a sterile, enclosed space, her identity completely reduced by her surroundings and the figures around her. I think the film can be perfectly summarised in its title. Safe, the word enclosed within 2 square brackets. It poses the question right from the opening. Can you ever be too safe?